Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is Legislative Review Committee, September 17th, and we have a quorum, and the first order of business will be approving the minutes from our last meeting, August 20. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That sounds unanimous. We just, in summary from the minutes to remind us that we were discussing the opportunity for the local civil rights legislation, and with the flood of duties and contracts for the CARES Act that the attorney's office had, that's going to be for October. And so we're going to go through some of the other topics that are on our agenda, and I personally am hoping we can move some things out of committee so that we can focus on the other topic, move some things along. And in that respect, I'll turn it over to Deborah to talk about what we have on the agenda today.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright. The first item on today's agenda is addressing our proposal regarding the topic of neighborhood traffic management program. And TPW Director Steve Decker will lead us in that discussion. We did begin the discussion at the last meeting, and commissioners expressed some items that they wanted to see addressed in the proposed revision. And Mr. Decker is prepared today, having addressed and included some of those items, and we're looking for additional guidance and input from you. He also has additional staff on the line. And so, Steve?
Thank you, ma'am, commissioners. And I would first like to start that a lot of the things that we see in this document, I actually worked on this in 2015 and wanted to go this direction to simplify this process. And can you hear me okay? I've got stuff sitting on my computer. Thank you. And I wanted to, I'll start with the things that are everything on the very first page, nothing really changed. I did remove some of the things that talked about funding because we already have the funding set up. We all have set up a funding source. But one thing that I did want to do that was brought to my attention to differentiate the different types of roadways, because this program is basically focused on residential streets and roadways and not on local roadways that do not have residents on it, or the collectors and arterials. Putting traffic calming on collectors and arterials. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
So residential would be defined as any street that has residences on it, not necessarily the number of residences or anything like that. I'm thinking, for example, like MLK, which is like right outside of my house. It's got some houses along it, but it might be considered a major collector roadway given its connections with North Avenue and East Broad Street. So.
And some of these roadways, and that's what I was going to address. There should be three programs. When you have a residential subdivision or those type of roadways, that's totally different than a local roadway or a minor collector or a major collector or an arterial. I'm preparing, not today, but for the near future, to look at local roadways that may have some residents, but also may have businesses, YMCAs, where we have a lot of pedestrians, where we may need some traffic calming. That'll be coming in the future. And then the arterials and collectors, those roadways are designed to move traffic safely. Multimodal is where we need to be going, but move traffic safely. Putting traffic calming on those roadways basically is not safe. There's some other things we can do. And I'll be coming to y'all in the near future about safety corridors, and I'll go into detail that later. That is a new thing that's happening in the United States. Federal Highway is supporting it. It has a good way of looking at traffic problems and speeding in our local area. That I think is a new way of doing business. It's basically education oriented, and I think that's what we need to do. But I will bring that up later. But what we did in this.
One moment, if I may. That additional information, the educational information, commissioners, is something that Mr. Decker will take to the manager's office and then ultimately would be presented to the entire commission. It's not been assigned to just LRC.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And just to be clear, and I might just be saying it in a different way of Commissioner Parker's input. Since this is titled Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, you're going in and you're sort of defining in A, under the program overview, the residential component that's necessary to be in the neighborhood. And then if it's a business neighborhood or thoroughfares without the residential component or the majority residential, you're saying is going to be it's under another topic.
Yes, and I'm going to be bringing back to management, and then eventually possibly come back to y'all with a local roadway safety program that be as well also simple. And I've had a lot of questions about this. Why doesn't this apply? This is a different kind of program and a different type of traffic calming. But I do want to address those issues that are brought to us. And safety is our prime concern in public works, highway safety, and pedestrian safety, and that's what we'll address in the future. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, and I'm just being clear, we don't currently have a roadway program traffic management. We don't have a roadway traffic management. You're saying that's coming?
Yes, ma'am. Local roadway. Yes, ma'am. You'll be seeing that in the future, because I have a lot of questions about that in the past. Why isn't this applicable? It does the different type of traffic calming and different type of involvement from citizens, it's actually simpler. The traffic engineer uses roadway safety audit team to do a lot of this, and I think you'll see a real positive when you see this come in the future.
And if I may also ask, Commissioners Wright and Parker, I think what I hear you saying is you want a clear definition of what types of residential components define what kind of traffic management programs would fall, what kind of traffic management steps would fall into this program as opposed to anything else. So do you want a definition of what would fall under this particular program?
Yeah. Like I recently had a constituent reach out to me about speeding on MLK, but I don't know if that qualifies as a residential street, since it could also be classified as a collector or a major arterial. So I'm just wondering what the parameters are, so I can let folks that know whether or not this falls under that program or if it's maybe a different program.
So we can include a definition, or at least a definition section.
So
yes.
So how would we know as commissioners? Or do we automatically know what are the collector? I mean, I know what the collector is, but I'm agreeing with Commissioner Parker. For my issues are out in the North Athens area, and it used to be very rural out there, but now people have built up their houses all along, but it's still like a straight shot, but now there's houses, so I don't really know what is classified. So you may not be able to define it right now for me. I know everybody don't want to talk about their own particular street, but somewhere either I would like to talk about specifically the areas that I'm getting calls from that I don't know have changed over the years or not.
And that's what staff and I have been talking about, trying to come up with a better definition. This basically started on heavy residential. And yes, we are growing. And that's why we're looking at local roads and plans for arterials and collectors down the roadway. So, we're planning this. It's not in place yet, but we have some plans that we're working on. But this goes to our current residential that we've done the last, 15, 20 years.
Okay, so let me see if this is the kind of detail that we feel is going to be helpful as we communicate this. If there's a residential driveway, or if there's 1 to 5 residential driveways on a stretch, is that what determines it's qualifying for the neighborhood traffic calming? Is that the kind of thing we would be wanting to include?
In the past, we've always looked at residential neighborhoods. And we've actually grown out of, for example, we've gone to some that may be just a roadway off of a collector that is a residential street. We have not looked at any of our country roads yet. Like I live on Old Lexington Roadway. It's pure residential out here, but it's also a major collector. And so we're doing traffic calming on that roadway there's other things that we can do. So it's one of these things we're going to have to balance and look at each one and then try to evaluate. The planning department has a list of the classifications of the roadway, and that's what I was going to use as a starting point. And then we also have local roadways classified, and I want to classify those and define those as well.
Okay. Because I think some of the safety concerns also that we could use in defining this is going to be residential driveways, mailboxes, and in particular, when the mailbox is across the street from the person's house. Those are very dangerous scenarios where the traffic calming seems like those would be some of the definitions that we're using for appropriate calming.
And we have to be careful of the how rural it gets, because the more rural it gets, the higher the speeds get. And that's why I like to look at another way of handling this, because putting traffic calming on a rural roadway with higher speeds could be really dangerous. There may be other things we can do. For example, we have sidewalks on part of Old Lexington, and a lot of people walk. When we go around the corner, there's no sidewalks and we walk on the street. I'm guilty of that myself, walking my dog. And so those streets behind off Old Lexington, we've actually put some speed humps in and some traffic calming. So there are some places that we've done this that maybe look a little rural, but they're heavily populated, and we've done that. There's another one off of 29 that is a cut through over to another state road, but it's real residential, and we'll put speed humps on those as well. So if you have something that you'd like for us to look at, we can certainly look at and help define that if it would make it helpful. Our traffic engineer, by the way, Tim Griffith, is on the line. He was our leader in our roadway safety audit team. So he is very safety oriented. And so he will help me help define those for you and see if we can do, this program can expand, but the local roadway can expand as well. So I think if we define residents in this one for a start, and then we will do a better definition as we go.
And I think that the examples, Commissioner Thornton, I think that some that you have and Commissioner Parker, those are going to help not distract from us making this applicable by using those examples. So what were some other, do you want to walk us through this and make sure some of the other things that were brought up? The funding taking out was a priority, and then the communication adding that a commissioner, not just neighbors, would be able to get this done.
Yes, ma'am. And one of the big things that we do, two big items. I never did like the 32.5. Why that came up, I'm not real sure. We reduced the number to 300 and brought it down to 30 miles an hour, which really made more sense. It was a lot more logical. But we added another feature because, as I said, our traffic engineer is safety oriented. He was the leader of the roadway safety audit team. He could look at other traffic engineering principles and safety features to say, well, they don't really meet the speed or they really don't meet the volume, but people are walking in the street and the higher speeds are not safe. It gives him the ability to work with the commissioner and with the citizens to say, I see what you're saying. I see we have some really high speeds, but you don't meet the requirements. But as a traffic engineer, I'm going to recommend we can do some things. And so that gives him that. We've never had that before. And I really think that will help solve some of the issues that we have. And that's why we went that way. If that makes sense to everybody and everybody's okay with that. I'm very proud of Tim. He was the leader in our roadway safety audit team. And he identified things along with his team that have never been identified before. And I know that he will do an excellent job working with our neighborhoods and our citizens to make that work. The other thing that we used to do, that we used to have to get a 65% of the owner occupied folks to agree to this before we do anything. That got a little tricky, and the mail-ins got tricky, and it was difficult for everyone. We can go to these meetings with the tax roll and identify how many people are owner-occupied. And if you get a majority, a minimum of 51%, you get a majority agreeing, we should move forward. And if we don't get that at the meeting, we can send out letters to the folks and say, this is what we're planning to do, and try to get 51%. They don't have to mail it in. They can call us. They can email us. They could drop it by our office. Anything we could do to make it better. Or they can send them to the district commissioner, and the commissioner get them to us. Whatever, how we want to work it, we'll work with them to make it work. So those are the three big things that we changed. It's simpler. It's a more simple process, and I think that it'll work much better. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Say that again. I'm going back to that initial process again. Who would? So when Miss Carpenter calls me about speeding on Smoky Road, are you saying that she, the resident, has to hold the other neighbors to get that 51%? Are we putting that on the resident?
No, I am not. What I was saying is, you as a commissioner or a citizen can say, we have a speeding problem. We can start the process. Okay. And that's how we start it. Not even a petition required. We start the process. We do some studies. We'd like to have a point of contact, someone we can talk to. Okay. The 51% can be done at the meeting, or if we don't have enough, we can send letters out afterwards and try to get the remaining 51%. Not getting a majority to agree to this. We've actually had sometimes a majority and still had people who didn't want it and didn't like it, but the majority of people, homeowners, wanted something. And then after we did the after studies, most of those people who didn't want it see the benefit. And so it feels like intrusion sometimes, some folks, when we come out and do traffic calming. I live around the corner where we put some, and I walk, and these people know that I was one of the folks who got this started. And a guy came up to me a couple of weeks ago and said, I didn't want these speed humps, but what a difference it made in my neighborhood. I now don't have to worry about people speeding. So that changes over time. So if we start with 51%, I think we've got a good majority to start with, or minimum.
I'm okay with the 51. I'm still trying to, I want to be clear on how we get to, I have letters from like 4 different people, and they were calling me, and I just asked them to put it in writing. They want their areas looked at. Tim knows about 2 of them. So what I'm saying, what would be the initial thing to happen for Miss Carpenter? Where does she call you? Does she call me? Or you just do it arbitrarily? What would be the first thing to address Miss Carpenter or Miss Doss?
For her to contact.
Hold on one second, Steve. I'm sorry, Commissioner Wright. May I make just a suggestion here, Chair? Steve, will you just walk us through step by step a resident initiated concern? So step by step, not just the resident has a concern and then we have the community meeting, but how do we get there? I think is what Commissioner Thornton is asking. Okay,
I will do that.
And then after that, if you'll also walk through a commissioner initiated concern.
Okay, and I could do that, but they're pretty much the same. Okay, and if you look at the program initiation, where it starts at the first big yellow holding, to initiate it, a resident of this neighborhood or the district commissioner contacts the traffic engineer or their office. That's how it starts. It could be in writing, it could be a phone call, it could be an email. As long as we contact the traffic engineer, he starts it. That starts the communication.
And Steve, I think that detail needs to be in there.
It is the very first line.
The phone number, the email. It says that, but yet then there's this big step of who is that? What's the phone number? What's the email? And that might have been lost between your previous steps that you said you merged into this document. But I think that the clarity there of the office and a phone number is relevant.
And the steps that you saw, and I'll get back to where we are. The steps that you saw when we get the call, we automatically send that, if we can, email to the people requesting so they see all the steps. because I still have some steps that are not in here that are really detailed. If I put all those in here, this will be about 6 pages long, and it'll get more confusing. That's why I did a step separate. Basically, it's not something that really does with this. It just tells you how to do it. And I can share that with commissioners if that would make it easier. But we send that typically when somebody does a request. But as I was saying, after we get that started, we really need to have a point of contact from there that if this person want to calls us or a commissioner, that be the point of contact so we can keep the communication going. Okay. Based on that conversation, what we try to do is gauge the area that the person is concerned with. Okay, this from block to block or a couple blocks. And that way the traffic engineer can go out and collect traffic data to see what we have. Traffic speeds, traffic volumes. Then they'll walk the area to look at it and see what the roadway looks like. Is it just a real narrow road with no sidewalk? What are there hills? Are there curves? So we can look at everything, see what that looks like. So that's the second part of that process. And then after we've done the study, we see where we are, we contact the point of contact, and the next step is to set up a meeting so that we could talk and try to gather neighbors together to discuss the possible type of traffic calming they would be interested in. There's several types that we can use. We can do speed humps. We can put up radar speed signs. There's several things that we can do, okay? Depending on the roadway. Not one shoe fits every foot on this one. So we have to kind of see what will fit. And that's when we start, when everybody agrees this is what we'd like to do, then it's where we look at the tax roll that we have with all the owner-occupied folks and try at that meeting gain a 51%. Realistically, sometimes there's 2 or 3 meetings. People like to go home and think about it, but that's fine. We could come back and meet again. And if we want to meet on the roadway and walk the roadway with them, we can do that as well. We try to make this as much customer oriented as possible to make sure that we get and hear what they want to do. Once we get to the point that, yes, we agree, this is what we want to do, then we will make sure we have 51%. And then we will prepare an agenda item to the mayor and commissioner with the recommendations that we have and get the funding approved to do this and seek action from the mayor and commissioner. That simplified what we do, but that's how simple it is. Did that help any?
Yeah, I think that was really helpful. I do have a question in that outreach. I get it that determining the point of contact for that program initiation, that could be clarified in there as well. But when you get down to step number 6, the neighborhood meeting, can you clarify how the communication is going to happen to those owner-occupied homeowners about when and where that meeting is happening? How's that being communicated?
Well, in the past, it's been very simple because it's not just one neighbor who is concerned about the speeding. The neighbors talk with each other, and a lot of them are concerned. And so we try to meet somewhere close to where we are. Sometimes we meet in fire stations. Sometimes we met at schools. It depends on where the location's at. This has to be, there is no set place where we have it. We try to make it as close to the neighborhood. We did one on the street. In fact, we're on the front porch talking about it with everybody. We try to make as much accommodations as we can to make this work. Now with COVID, it may be on a web meeting. I'm not sure. We'll have to be very open to how we do this. And I did mention that it may be a web meeting. But we try to have the point of contact help us contact their neighbors or the commissioner to get everybody together. In the past, we've been very, very successful because not just one person wants this. The whole neighborhood basically has issues with it. So that's kind of what's done in the past. But we have to be open-minded about this and try to make whatever will work.
Right. What is the feasibility of doing it similar to when a demolition sign goes up on a hold? There's a postcard that's sent out to the affected people or in a geographical circle around that potentially demolition house. It seems to me the feasibility of that, just like you said, sometimes it's contentious. Some neighbors want it, sometimes they don't. I think that if we can allow the communication to come from within the government to each owner-occupied resident, and we're not pitting neighbors against each other, and some tell them about the meeting and some don't know about the meeting. Is that feasible?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, but sorry, I'll let you go ahead and answer before I chime in.
Yeah, and I think between you and the door, I think we did this a few years back because it was difficult for the point of contact to get with everybody, and we did send out postcards. So we have done this before. We tried to do it economical. When we first started this, we didn't have a big pot of money. We had this much money to do this much, and so it was very difficult to get it started. We're not there right there today. We have enough money to do some substantials that have been outstanding. Yes, we can do postcards if you believe that's the way we should do it, and not rely on the point of contact with the commissioner to do that. We could do that. That's certainly something we can do. It will be a cost out of a traffic engineering budget, but I don't think it would be that major cost. Tim can answer that if it would be, but we've done it in the past, and we've been very successful the way we've done this. Because speeding in your neighborhood takes away your comfort level, and a lot of people feel that, and I certainly understand that. I've been in traffic calming since 1984, so I understand the feelings that folks have. So if you want us to do postcards, I can certainly put that in there and relieve that job from the point of contact.
Yeah, I've definitely encountered a lot of constituents who are older and maybe aren't as mobile, and so going door to door knocking to let their folks know in their neighborhood about a neighborhood meeting is sort of difficult for them. It's just weighted them for following through on the process. So I agree, the postcards could be really helpful to help the neighborhood get organized. Another random thought I had, I don't know how feasible this would be, but I know that we've discussed using the Nixle to text people about like mass alerts regarding COVID. I wondered if that software would be available to send people, because I don't know if people, they might see a random mailing from their government and put it in the trash, but maybe if we could text people to let them know as well.
And I'm going to have Stephen Bailey answer that, if he would, Stephen, because you're probably more familiar with that than I am.
Sure. Yeah, that's really similar to what we've done, like with public forums. In fact, for public forums, we've sent out mailers and used the Nixle system as well. So we can use that same system for NTMP. I think that's a great idea.
Cool. I would love to see that for sure. Awesome. I had a couple other questions. I don't want to take away. Allison, if you had a couple other things you wanted to address first.
Well, on that specific topic, I think it's important that we do it the old-fashioned way as well as the most modern way because of that variety, I think, of communication modes. It's kind of like our parking meters. They have to have coins and compute and
yeah, I agree. Both is really
yeah. And then in the postcard part of it, if it can include the phone number for contacting, so that we're not also so that spontaneity of making a phone call is there to someone that's in their comfort zone versus as well as the other contacts. But the communication of that meeting, I think, is a key element for success in that mode, and it taking it away from that neighbor knocking on the door sort of approach, so that they can genuinely share their feedback. And if somebody can't come to a meeting, they can call and say whether they want it or don't. But so, Commissioner Parker, that wraps up what I wanted to circle around to that. So what else do you want to bring?
It should actually probably be three points of contact with postcard, Nixle, and the commissioners in those areas. We have a responsibility and we have contacts, and we should know some of the key people. So I don't want to just put it on the Department of Traffic and Engineering, especially for the folks that I know that probably have called me in the first place. So I think there's 3 points of contact, and we should use all three.
Okay, so do you think, Commissioner Thornton, do you think that at the program initiation, if it is a neighbor of if an owner-occupied resident initiates it, that the commissioner is included at that beginning discussion point?
If I could address that, it has been our policy when we do one of these, as soon as we make contact with a citizen, we contact the commissioner with an email saying this has happened, so that you're not in the dark. I don't want to bring something to the commission and the district commissioner's never seen that. And so we purposely make sure that we contact you. And so if you're not involved up front, we will make sure that you are.
Okay, and Ovita, and do you want to?
I don't want this to be complicated. I think postcard, nixle, and just whatever role that the commissioner wants to play and being in contact. So I'm not trying to create a new layer. I'm just saying that I think those are three things, and the commissioner can be as involved as he or she wants, but be a part of that process. You don't want one of your constituents to walk up and say, we just met and we didn't know nothing about it. So I just want to make sure those three things are in place.
David Clark and I talked about this, and out of respect for your position and the fact that it'll be coming and be in your district, we have always tried to contact you. I just think that's a respectful thing to do, and it helps the neighbor as well to know that the commissioner, if it has not been involved, is aware of what's going on. So that's a policy that we set a long time ago.
I'm good with it.
Commissioner Parker, you want to get
Sure. Yeah, I had a couple
stuff?
I was wondering what happens if there's less than, what happens on a street where it's mostly renters? Because it says, a majority, 51% of the owner-occupied homeowners agree. So I rent, for example. I don't know how many other renters are on my street. I think it's mostly homeowners, but I can imagine streets like Odd Street, adjacent to mine, where there are a lot of renters. What happens in scenarios like that?
Well, because it does say owner occupied, because there are a lot of rental properties around Athens, we have never gone to the renters. Now, in the past, I have sent this to the homeowner themselves and have never received any complaints, as long as they're making areas safe and make it safer for their renters as well. We can talk about that. I'm not really sure what we would do about that, because we've never really experienced that. The renters have never, actually, let me back up. The renters have come to some of the meetings in support, and then they have called their landlord and say, this is what's happening, and got positive results out of it too. Which we and I would like to everyone understand, when we do these meetings, we don't run the meeting. What we do is we discuss concepts that we could do to help you with the problem that you have. And we want the people who live on that street to let us know what they would like to have. And so if the renters are there, then they're welcome to come to the meetings. And if they would like to comment, that's fine. But when it comes to take it to the mayor commission, we have to use owner occupied for the 51%.
We have to use that.
Well, we have in the past. Let me state it that way. We have in the past. It was 65% in the past, which I thought was difficult sometimes, and made it very, very stressful for residents to try to get that 65%.
For sure. And I imagine on streets that are a high mixture of owner-occupied properties and renters, it might complicate the situation to figure out who rents and who owns, and getting 51% of folks that own their homes, versus if you have a ton of people show up to the meeting, but only 20% of them are the homeowners, the owner occupants of these houses, that math for them might be complicated. So I wonder if there's a way we can amend this policy to make explicit what role renters can play in making these changes on their street. Be it, contacting the landlord, just laying out explicitly here what they can do to see that these changes are made if they're interested.
May I ask a question, Commissioner Wright?
Please.
Sure. Steve, in the situation, in the scenario that Commissioner Parker just laid out, if a community meeting were occurring or neighborhood meeting were occurring, and the majority of those present, or less than 51% present, were renters, are the renters able to contact the landlords, homeowners, and encourage the homeowners to submit their letters of support, emails of support, via whatever all the methods are? And if so, would TPW then count those towards the 51% goal?
And I was going to say, and I apologize, it's been a long time since I've done this. I took 2 years off and like the world went away. But in the past, we have sent to everybody, every property owner, not just the owner occupied. A lot of times we encourage the renters to speak with their landlords to let them know that this is coming, but we send something to them as well. We have received very positive comments from them because that makes their property easier to rent if we have speed control. So I think we had 1 or 2 negative comments over the last 12, 15 years. Mostly people say, yeah, we love this because that's going to make my house more rentable. And so it's been a real positive thing. And I'm sorry that I forgot about this. I've slept since I did this, and it's 2 years taking a break. It's taken me a while to get back into this mode, but and the memory's coming back. But I think the renters do get a voice with
So
the
now
landlords.
I thought I
Yeah,
had
go
it,
ahead.
but now I'm confused. So if we do next door, if we do postcards, who receives that? The renter or the land or the owner?
The owner, because that's the only address that we have for that
Okay.
piece of property.
So-
and it comes off the tax roll.
So what we need to do, it sounds to me like, to make this accurate to the actual way it's done versus what's written, we go back up to number 4, program initiation. A neighborhood property owner or resident. I think we need to take out the owner occupied then. It sounds like you're going with just property owner, like you said, because you have that information on the tax digest, or the commissioner. And obviously a renter can talk to a commissioner to get it initiated. But it seems to me if we're actually going property owner, not owner occupied, that we need to make that explicit in this.
Yes, and we could. The issue that we ran into in the past is sometimes there is one owner of several pieces of property and they may live in another state and we never get a response back. And we actually ran into this a couple times, and it kind of delayed the process. And that's why the director before me, David Clark, put in owner occupied to simplify it. Now I could do whatever y'all would like to do, and I certainly will, but I'm afraid it would complicate it and delay the project getting responses back from some homeowners.
Could we possibly have it say all the residents? So since you're sending it to, and maybe I'm confused now, you're sending it to every address in the affected area?
Well, no, we're sending it to the property owners for the tax roll. If you're renting a piece of property, your name is not on the tax roll, the owner is, and they may live in another state or they may live in Athens. That's the issues that we ran in the past, trying to get a hold of the owners, which delayed a lot of the projects. And so that's why they went to owner occupied.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is you're going with homestead exemption. So now you're taking properties that are in the area and then sending messages to the ones that have homestead exemption, which proves that they're owner occupied. So you're whittling down it. And then we would assume that what's not owner occupied is the category that Commissioner Parker's discussing, which is the actual resident tenant.
Right.
And so I think as a committee, we need to talk through these categories of communication and be clear on what we want.
I mean, I understand that you wouldn't maybe be able to address the postcard to a resident if they're not on the tax roll, but they live there. But we could still send a postcard, like, dear resident, and send them to the everyone that lives on the affected street.
And we could do that so that they could contact their property, their landlord, their owner.
And they can then
that might be helpful.
Landlord, yeah.
But I would like to send it to the property owner as well, too. So
No, I don't think that is far out of reach because we're not talking about a whole district. We're talking streets, so it's not going to be that expensive to send it to the resident and the property owner if they're somewhere else. We're not talking about we're sending a whole district. We may be talking about MLK and whatever those residents are, or Smoky Road. So I think to make sure we're covering all our bases, I think we should do both and still do the Nixtal and still use our commissioners.
Okay, we are flying by the time here. Much more, do we want to see this again next month and move on to the next topic, guys, or do you want to keep giving the details for this? And then, how do you guys want to cover this? We got about 10, maybe 15 more minutes.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Steve has really answered my concerns and calls that I have been getting on the process of getting traffic calming. I'm good. I just needed to get back with some folk that didn't like their initial way. So I'm good.
So
Commissioner
Steve,
Wright.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I wanted Steve to, I'm sorry for interrupting you. Steve,
Yes, ma'am.
these items that we've discussed today, those are the proposed changes, correct? Because I don't want Commissioner Thornton to relay to her constituents that this is how you should do it. Now, these are the changes that maybe LRC will recommend and that I would draft and Commissioner Wright would review before making that presentation to the Mayor and Commission, correct?
Correct.
Right. So as it stands today, these processes are not in place, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I haven't even told my constituents we were having this discussion, the calls, because I really thought it was going to take 2, 3, 4, 5 months. But it looks like Steve is on the money now, so I'm good. I've given myself some leeway. So by the time we really get it together, I'll look like it'll be fine.
Okay. So let's wrap this up. I still would love for us to start moving stuff out of committee. Commissioner Parker, do you think that if we move this out of committee today, that we could, without not including the renter part, can we all say that we'll continue to talk about that because it could be a commission-defined option from LRC once we get it in front of everybody?
I'd like to make sure that logistically, like the language is feasible. If we are saying we're going to send it to residents, that is something that can be done, So I don't know if Steve, if briefly you want to say, like, if that sounds like something we can do, if that sounds all right.
Yes, ma'am. We can do that. And Tim can verify that. Tim, you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Cool. And I had one or two, maybe just one last question. But I defer to my colleagues if they want to move this out, then that's fine.
Commissioner Edwards, you want to chime in? Oh, go ahead, Ovid. I'm sorry, Ovid, I couldn't hear you. I was talking over. Go ahead.
No, I think Commissioner Parker had another question, so I was going to say, we should hear you.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't heard from Russell Edwards at all, so I'm wondering what is on his mind before I get to yapping again.
Well, you've been in the meeting 45 minutes longer than me talking about this, so go for it.
Okay. So I had a question about the applicable traffic engineering principles as referenced under point 5, the problem identification and solution selection. What some of those might be to make clearer to folks under what circumstances they might be eligible for some traffic calming measures if they don't meet the requirement of the 300 vehicles per day and 85th percentile speed. Just because it seems kind of subjective, and I was wondering if the possible safety concerns sort of are those principles that you're talking about, or if there's some more information that we could get about that.
And the ones that I have listed are the common ones, the 6 that I list on here. The no sidewalk and narrow streets, wide road allows for higher speeds, multiple driveways actually can cause issues because you can't see all the driveways, trees and vegetation blocking sight visibility. If you have a large cut through, sometimes cut through people are in a hurry, which really, you may have a few high speeds, but you don't meet the speed. Or it's close to a school and students walking. Those are some of them. There are, the traffic engineer, as I said, has done a lot of roadway safety auditing projects. And if there's a lot of curves, it creates sight distance problem. There may be issues on the roadway that he would discuss with the neighborhood, saying, these are things that I've identified that are traffic engineering principles that cause your neighborhood not to be safe. And you don't meet all these criteria, but we should do something to make it safe. And that allows him that latitude to work with you as a district commissioner, say, I see a problem. I know it's not meeting these standards, but it is a problem. We need to do something and then work with you as a district commissioner and the homeowners to make it safe.
Okay, so I guess maybe under the neighborhood meeting bullet point, making clear that the traffic engineering principles and safety concerns also weigh into the discussion, just for clarity, so that folks know that it's not just the traffic data that may impact the potential solutions available to them. But other than that, I mean, I think that sounds fine.
Okay, that just shows another importance of having the most people affected at the meeting. So that goes back to making sure the residents, obviously we don't have a name, the actual residential postcard, the owner postcard, and I still think even though they're absentee landlords, it might be good for them to have a postcard that knows stuff's happening at their property that they're not tending to, and especially if it has the tenant reaching out to them, they know what they're talking about, right? If the tenant's involved. So, Steve, are you saying for this to move forward, we have your topic with all the yellow markings? Do we? And I think we addressed most of the changes that we had asked for, and then you've got an internal step by step that you send out. Will that come forward with an agenda item?
Yeah, I can attach that. I want to update it because if we're going to do postcards, I want to put all that stuff in there that I kept it in a separate file so that I could go back and add anything I wanted to. And I'd like to sit down with Stephen and Tim and make sure that I get this as concise as we can. And I like to keep it as simple as possible too. If you make it real confusing, then it makes it difficult for homeowners to do this. I mean, most people have a job, so they're busy working and taking care of their family. The more simple we can make this process, the easier it'll be for everyone.
Okay. Just as a point of order for today, we got started at about 1:12. So if everybody can bear with us and us get an hour in here, I'm looking for a motion for this to move forward to the full mayor and commission.
And so the changes, like, for example, that I brought up with the truth and language to make some things clearer, I can just present that as a CDO.
Yeah. And I think that and does everybody want to see this before we put it in the agenda? Because since we're a committee, we can move this forward. We don't have to, Deborah, isn't that right?
That is correct, Commissioner Wright. In this case, though, I think the manager would want to.
I'm fine with moving it forward.
Okay. I'm
yes,
sorry.
Deborah?
In this case, Manager Williams oversees TPW, and any change in this kind of policy, typically in an agenda item, he would review before we move it forward. So I can do my best to expedite that process. I just don't know that it would make it to the October voting meeting, which is normally what I do when you ask for something to be expedited. So Steve and his staff will have to include all that you've asked. Traffic engineer will definitely need to run through all of the processes and the policies that he would have to consider. Lane would have to review it, and then it would still have to make it onto the agenda item in enough time for all of the commissioners to review. So I can get the process started, Commissioner Wright. I just don't know if that means it will make it to the voting meeting in October. But if that's your desire, I'll do my best to make it happen.
Well, the traffic calming only does, this whole thing is only done 9 months out of the year. I guess that coincides with school traffic as well. And we're right in the middle of that. Does the committee, do you want to just shoot for November, or do you want her to, and I'll put a word into Blaine about us wanting to do October if that's what the committee wants.
I'd love to see it come to us for a vote in October. I've had a lot of residents interested in this recently, and I think some of these streamlined processes would be really helpful for them. So I would support that.
Okay, well, let's go for that. Deborah will go, assistant manager. Let's go for that timeline, because I also have neighborhoods who have been waiting for the summer when we don't do neighborhood traffic calming data stuff. So there are areas in the wings waiting for this timeline that it's done. So is there a motion?
So moved.
I second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye, that's unanimous. So we're moving this out of committee. Yay. And
With the recommendations, yay.
huh? What? And Deborah, if you'll keep me posted on what I can do to help move it along, don't let me miss a checkpoint that I can help move this along. Okay. Our second topic, this just as a reminder, we have a moratorium. It's for December 4th, and it would be advantageous for us to tackle this in a timely manner so that we can address, and I will let Deborah and her staff take on the beloved motorized vehicles on multi-use paths topic.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Commissioner Wright. This topic had been discussed even long before I came on to as a member with LRC, and Ms. Hines has been consistently working on this. At the last meeting that the LRC discussed this topic, it was asked that we reach out to the Athens in Motion Commission and get a written position from that commission, and then that was in fact submitted. And Ms. Hines shared that with the Legislative Review Committee, and then I reshared it in preparation for this meeting. And so Ms. Hines will lead this discussion. And Ms. Cochran is also present on behalf of Leisure Services.
Hi, everyone. I don't know that I have a whole lot to add. I just have that opinion from the Athens in Motion organization. I'm happy to answer some questions that you all have, but I think it's consistent with what we expected that they would find, that that there may be some benefits to having it, but there's also a large list of risks and concerns related to bringing them, allowing micromobility to participate. So I'm available to answer any questions that you all might have about this process. And I think we just, because we do have that moratorium that it will be expiring soon, it would behoove us to look at taking some sort of action on that.
Committee members, what is your take on this? I have heard absolutely nothing in the community, in my community anyway, on missing these or wanting them. And so I'm interested in hearing what the committee's been thinking about, knowing this topic's coming up and the moratorium and us needing to address this topic.
I mean, what's the likelihood that birds come back when the moratorium is lifted, given the hostility with which they have been met by the government? Like, are they just going to start pouring back into town again, or do we have any sense of like?
They have been resurfacing in other communities, so they're not as gone as one would think, even with the pandemic. So we do need to address this. We've done the moratorium twice, and it is time for us to make a decision as a unified government.
Yeah, I think
that's my.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. Committee members. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Carry on, Terry.
Sorry. I just answered your question, Commissioner Berger, as well. I'd also want to point out that I believe that they are, or at least some shared micromobility devices are operating in Atlanta. And I know we've already had another vendor who reached out to me again as recently as maybe 2 days ago, asking about the status of our micromobility moratorium and whether they would.
Gotcha. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Can we just extend the moratorium while we continue exploring how to incorporate shared mobility device parking infrastructure as part of our Clayton Street SPLOS project? Extend it for another year.
So I think what I would say up to that is that moratoriums are supposed to be limited in scope. They're supposed to be temporary. The fact that this has been going on for almost 2 years now, opens us up to the argument that it is no longer temporary. Although I think we could make a strong argument that COVID-19 has disrupted everything, including micromobility in many ways, which would make it a little bit hard to identify how to move forward. But I think that my advice would be that we should move.
Could we just ban them and then continue looking at this?
Yes, absolutely. I think the state legislature even recognized that, at this point, they're going to let counties and local municipalities decide how they want to handle it on a local basis. We've certainly reached out to Athens in Motion, gotten their feedback. I don't know what else we would need to do before we could make a decision to ban them or to allow them.
Yeah, I move that the LRC recommends banning them.
And this being the e-scooters, can you guys remind me, Sherry, or what other staff, about the bike share, since we have what appears to be a successful bike share operation on campus, but yet we know that the campus will be a banned area for the e-scooters. Can you remind me of how we can divide those two topics, and if we want to?
Sure. So we actually, and I know it's just this topic has been going on for such a long time, but we amended the ban maybe a year ago to allow shared e-bike systems. So we could certainly leave that in place and just continue as we are doing now to define shareable dockless mobility devices as not including e-bikes. And so this would only apply to other types of shared micro-mobility devices.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that.
Okay. So Russell, that still coincides with your, that still works with what you want to make a motion for, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor of us going ahead and banning those micro-mobility shared devices?
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. That's unanimous. And then, since we're not in so much of a hurry, this agenda report could be in the November cycle. Deborah, does that sound like the next move for us to get this for full mayor and commission vote?
So what you would do, Commissioner Wright, if you don't mind, is just ask the mayor for permission to include the first topic. And while I'm drafting that, this one actually would be easier to draft. So we could do both, or whatever the pleasure of the LRC committee members are. We can do one and wait and follow the regular timeline for the other, or we can do both with the permission of the mayor.
Okay. So guys, you want me to reach out to Kelly and let him know that we'd like to be adding both of these to the October vote? And then we'll let Blaine know, you'll let Blaine know that that's coming from that direction. But this one's, the standalone doesn't need the manager loop, right?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody? Obviously, sooner rather than later. Okay. I would like us to move down to confirming that we have a quorum for our next meeting. And I would like to prioritize the topics that we have for future consideration. I got bold dates of when these topics were assigned, and I don't want to assume anyone's interest or lack thereof on any of these topics. So I think that what we have for sure for October is the local civil rights legislation, discussing that, internal improvements as well as external options for that. We have LEAD. Can I get somebody's opinion about LEAD and where you want that prioritized?
It's been a while since we've talked about it. It's maybe about time it comes back around. What do y'all think?
Okay. Ovita and Russell, what are you thinking about LEAD?
Yeah, we need to get that done because we're looking at building stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to tackle for the next meeting the local civil rights legislation and then get reacquainted with the LEAD certification program? Do we want to tackle both of those in one meeting?
I'm definitely with the civil rights piece. Lead, whatever y'all want to do is fine.
Yeah, that sounds good. Put those two on.
Okay.
Favor
All right.
that.
So we'll do that for the October meeting. Special events, I think that's kind of back burner at this point with the pandemic. Is everybody concur with that? And then the minimum drink price, we may never see that one again. Do you want me to ask Kelly if we just unassign it? I'm not sure how that works. Should I find out?
I think we maybe wait to discuss that. We need to talk to the attorney about our, the settlement that we're currently under with the bar owners and how we might need to move that discussion to around the time of the liquor license renewal, investigation, how that might look.
Okay, so we'll leave it on the back burner. We've got our two topics for October. We're going to get reintroduced to LEAD. And then what are we looking at here? Sarah, are you the bookkeeper here? What are we looking at? The 15th of October?
I will confirm that in a moment.
That's looking wide open for me. Is everybody else looking good for that week?
Yes, ma'am. It is the 15th.
Yeah.
Looks like at this point, it's a long time away, it seems like, but we're looking for a quorum on the 15th, and we'll have those two topics. All right, one more motion from the committee.
A motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Second for Russell. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thanks. Good work, guys. Thanks for getting two topics out of here, and I'll type now.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks everybody.
Yeah.